Hello, this is Mrs. Politsky, and I have notes for Chapter 5, Section 1, Physical Geography of the United States. Before we get started, you're going to need a copy of the guided notes from your teacher. So once you have that, follow along and make sure that you have the right information to put into the blanks. All right, starting with question number 1 or statement number 1, the physical landscape of the United States changes from east to west. In the east, we have the Atlantic coastal plain, which is flat and close to sea level. The land eventually rises as we travel west to what is known as the Piedmont. The Piedmont is an area where the elevation increases steadily, and what is probably most noted is the rivers. The flow of the rivers tends to move faster, kind of like rapids. And during the time of the Industrial Revolution, this is where a lot of the big factories were located. So you might have seen this in areas not very far from places like Baltimore or Philadelphia and such, because of the fact that they could use water power to harness energy to run their spinning looms and weaving equipment. So the Appalachian Mountains, they're an old mountain system that has eroded over millions of years. Today, the highest peak in the Appalachians is just around 6,700 feet. West of the Appalachians is the interior plains. Further west are the Great Plains, where you live, which are vast grasslands. Elevation climbs again towards the Rocky Mountains. And finally, when we hit the west, we can reach the Sierra Nevadas and the Cascade Mountains. The Pacific Coast Range is also out there. Alaska's Mount McKinley, also known today as Denali, is North America's highest peak at 20,320 feet. The Hawaiian Islands are also located in the west, and they were formed as a series of volcanoes. All right. Number 2, the interior plains are a set of rolling hills, lakes, and large rivers that are stretching from the Appalachians westward towards the Rocky Mountains. When we talk about the interior plains, we've got to talk about some major river systems. So, to start with, a stream or a river that flows into a larger stream or river is called a tributary. And in the interior plains, there are many tributaries that feed into the massive Mississippi River. Probably most noted are the Missouri River and also the Ohio rivers. Um, of these three rivers, many of the local streams and creeks that we have near us here in Nebraska will eventually feed into the Missouri River, and the Missouri River will eventually feed into the Mississippi. All continents have what is known as a continental divide, except for Antarctica. The continental divide basically is a section of elevation or elevated terrain forming a border between two watersheds, causing waters to flow in opposite directions. Here in the United States, we typically look at like the Rocky Mountains. So rivers like the Missouri River, because they're kind of located on the eastern side of the continental divide, happen to flow kind of east. Same could be said about the Platte River as well. Rivers that are on the western side of the continental divide, like the Colorado River, tend to flow towards the west. Okay, in the United States, the continental divide sometimes is known as the Great Divide. Number 5, in the eastern part of the United States, there's a variety of climates that can be found. The Northeast has a humid continental climate, which is kind of like what we have here in a good portion of Nebraska, where you have snowy winters and warm, humid summers. Further south, we find a humid tropical climate or subtropical climate. Winters are milder and summers may be more humid. Further south, like in the tip of Florida, way down here where I'm moving my eraser here, you're going to find a tropical savanna where it's warm year-round. The state that has the only humid tropical climate happens to be Hawaii. Alaska has a climate zone of tundra and the subarctic. Our lives are affected by natural resources because we depend on natural resources from all over the country for fuel, food, electricity, and our daily needs. Coal, found in the U.S., helps provide more than half of our nation's electricity and more than 25% of the world's electricity. In the United States, we have productive farmland because of the climate and fertile soils that are located in the interior plains. All right. Volcanoes threaten places like Hawaii, Alaska, and the Pacific Northwest. One of the most famous being Mount St. Helens, which is located in the state of Washington. Aside from volcanoes, if you live in the interior plains, in the Great Plains, we have an area of tornadoes where they hit the hardest called Tornado Alley. And the strongest tornado rating is what we call F5. If you take a look at the map, the areas with the darkest colors down here in Oklahoma are the areas where there are the most tornadoes. And if you look up here closer to Nebraska, there's a little swath here that goes kind of from Grand Island all the way up to just east of or west of Sioux City, kind of in our neighborhood. And that is another area that is prone to tornadoes. California has more than 10,000 earthquakes a year. The first being recorded by a guy named Gaspar de Portola. Um, and this was recorded back in the 1700s. Okay, looking at the map down here, if you take a look at places like Oklahoma into Kansas, areas here along the Mississippi River, and then also along the west coast, these are some of the most active fault lines when it comes to earthquakes. This area right here near southeastern Missouri is sometimes known as the New Madrid Fault. And back in the days before Lewis and Clark had explored this area, the New Madrid Fault actually changed the flow of the Mississippi River. If you take a look at what's happening in Oklahoma, this is in more recent years. And as recently, we've had the opportunity to feel some of those earthquakes that are coming out of this part of the country. All right. Thank you very much for listening to your notes. And you will need to complete your Chapter 1 section or Chapter 5 Section 1 review.